This is Judy Ann Scheidler, and I'd like to welcome you back to At Home in Bethel Park. Today we have with us Mr. Michael Schock. Mr. Schock is the president and owner of Advanced Chimney Sweeps in Uniontown. Mr. Schock, welcome. Can I call you Mike?
Yes.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
You've been in business since when?
1996.
1996.
Yes.
Wow. I bet you've cleaned a lot of chimneys.
Yes, we have.
In 15 years. Just to get this out of the way, when you say you're a chimney sweep, are there any organizations you belong to so that if somebody calls up a chimney sweep and wants to know how professional they are, what would they say?
There's been various organizations that we've been associated with over the years. The National Chimney Sweep Guild, the Pennsylvania Chimney Sweep Guild. The Better Business Bureau is kind of a generalized organization, but I think that's probably probably one of the most important ones as far as a resource for consumers.
Yeah.
And CSIA, obviously, that's the Chimney Safety Institute of America.
Is that an organization or a licensing board?
It's a membership organization as well as a licensing board as far as the certification that you acquire as being a chimney sweep, which isn't necessary. It's just it's at the discretion of the chimney company.
Okay. Okay, so you as the owner, are you required to be licensed, or under Pennsylvania law, you have to have a contractor license?
You have to have a contractor's license through and be registered through the state of Pennsylvania, but in no way, shape, or form is that a certification. It's just a registration stating that you're registered with the state of PA. Certification is something that you actually have to take a test on codes and standards as well as technicalities of.
That would be this?
That would be one of the correspondences that you would reference. But there's numerous. There's the NFPA 211, the NFPA 54, the NFPA.
NFPA, what's that?
And these are the other code books. The NFPA 31.
What does NFPA stand for?
National Fire Protection Association.
Okay, so it's something that oversees safety-related issues with a chimney as opposed to cosmetic.
It does, and I think it kind of touches base on both, but I think the emphasis is on safety.
Good, okay. Well, and you are certified?
I am, as a company, certified through the CSIA, Chimney Safety Institute of America.
Okay.
And you can go a step further with that. You can certify your employees as well if you wanted to, and we do that. But most of our training is in-house with our employees.
Continuing ed?
Continuing ed, yeah. We do safety meetings. We do some of our manufacturers. We're certified installers of the products that we install. So there are numerous things that we do get involved with as far as continued education.
Okay, well that's interesting because I'm going to ask you about the continuing ed from your suppliers in a second, but. When we think about chimney sweeps, a lot of us think about Mary Poppins.
Yes.
And we picture Dick Van Dyke dancing across the rooftops of London with his brooms. Of course, nobody dances on rooftops.
No.
But brooms? Do you really use brooms?
No, we don't. That's a little nostalgia from chimney sweeps of yesteryear, but chimney sweeps by today's standards are very technologically advanced. You may go to a trade show and see a chimney sweep participating in
with a top hat?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and but for the most part, it's a very technologically advanced industry. By today's standards, it's came a long way.
Okay, but that looks like a broom.
It does. It does. And
what is that?
Well, there are a variety of different brushes. Would you like me to grab one?
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't quite look soft like a broom. They look very bristly.
They do, and they each serve they each have an intended purpose for what they're used for. This is a poly brush. This is a brush that's intended to clean loose to stubborn debris off of the interior chimney flue, and it's not very abrasive, so it is the choice of brushes that you would want to use because it's not going to scarify or scratch the surface of the flue liner.
I was just going to ask you, that looks like it could be kind of scratchy.
it's not bad. This would be the recommended choice. If you were looking for a brush that was going to clean the flue liner, this would probably be the choice brush because it is plastic.
Okay.
And it's going to be less, yes, it's going to be less abrasive.
Oh, it is plastic.
The clay top flue liner of the chimney is, and what a lot of people aren't aware of this, but it's glazed. And the best way to explain it is that I would say it's comparable to a nonstick skillet. You wouldn't want to use a metal spatula on a nonstick skillet because this is abrasive.
That looks very fine, very thin.
It is fine and it is thin, but because it is metal, it's abrasive. And once you put this into a chimney flue, it has a tendency to scratch the surface of the clay top flue liner. And in the future, you're gonna get more buildup than you say you would have prior to using this brush.
In the grooves.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, there are situations that prompt you to use the metal brushes. And some of the situations would be heavy glaze that you're not having a lot of success with chemically, and you have no other recourse but to remove the creosote. So it's the lesser of two evils, I guess you could say. You could either have a chimney fire or have some scratches in your flue from removing some of the stubborn buildup. This here is a worst case scenario. This is a type of brush that you can see it is also metal, but it also is very, very stiff.
Kind of the Roto-Rooter for the chimney.
Yeah, for the most part. And
wow.
You would use this only as a last recourse, and it is fantastic at removing very, very stubborn buildup. But yeah, personally, I would exhaust every other resource before I would go this route. I would use chemicals. And a combination of chemicals and poly brushes, and with that being said, that should do the job. But in the event that it doesn't, this could prevent a fire. So
I'm going to get to that, but one real quick question: when people think of chimney sweeps, they think of chimney soot coming out into their home. What do you do to prevent that from coming out?
Well,
and do you clean from up on top or from down below?
You could do either method of cleaning. You can do it from the top or the bottom.
Okay.
Traditionally, a lot of chimney sweeps today sweep fireplaces from the bottom.
Okay.
Because you can, and the least amount of time you spend on a roof is the least amount of damage potentially you're going to cause to somebody's roof.
And least amount of possibility of injury to you or your worker too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's twofold.
Yeah.
And it's nice because when you clean it from the bottom, you have the ability to isolate the dust into the area to where you're working, and you can see it. Secondly, we use what they call a negative pressure HEPA filtration vacuum system. And it's not really a vacuum system, it's a dust control device. And what it does...
What did you call that?
It's a dust control device.
No, what was the whole name of that thing?
It's a negative pressure HEPA filtration vacuum system.
Okay.
And it catches it's not really a vacuum. Even though it can be utilized in that manner, it really is a dust collection system.
Okay.
And it's made for indoor air quality purposes. So whenever we're cleaning, if the fine particulate that we don't necessarily see while we're working, it helps catch that. And there's several vacuums and different speed blower motors within this system, and it does this job as far as giving you the necessary protection you need while you're on a job.
So it keeps
the house clean.
Keeps the house clean.
And it keeps the dust out of our lungs.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yes.
Now, when we talked about the brush, you mentioned something about heavy buildup and chemicals. When we talk about heavy buildup, what makes that buildup in the chimney?
The byproduct of burning wood, is creosote. And the more incomplete the combustion is, the more creosote you're going to get. And in Latin terms, what that means is the more smoke your fireplace produces, or the wood produces, the more tar droplets that are going to produce on the interior wall of the flue, which translates into creosote.
Tar, sap?
Yes.
Okay.
So wet wood, pine, chemically treated wood such as 2x4s from a lumber yard.
Isn't it poison?
Yes, it is poisonous. It's caustic. These are things that really should deter you from burning these types of woods because they do have a lot of resin in them, and they do two things. One, they produce a lot of creosote, and two, the creosote is, they do three things actually. Mm-hmm. The second thing it does is the chemicals are very acidic in nature, mm-hmm. and that could speed up or accelerate the deterioration process of the chimney more so than it would under normal operating conditions.
So you talk about a brush eroding the chimney liner, the wrong kind of wood will do the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh,
as
okay.
well as make you more susceptible to chimney fires.
Oh.
So it all has an intended.
Which woods are no-nos?
Pine. The woods you don't want to use, without question, are pine. Pine doesn't matter how long you treat it, how long it sets for. Pine has a lot of resin by nature, and it produces a lot of creosote. In most of the chimney fires that we go to, and we typically go to about 80 to 120 a year.
Wow.
And, you know,
wow.
in that range, I would say at least half of them fires are a contribution from pine or wetwood. And wetwood's another one you want to stay away from.
Ouch. And then, of course, womanized wood, that's like, we all should know, don't burn that. That wood, that's poison.
That's a no-no.
That'll kill you.
Absolutely.
The wood that I like to use in my fireplace is cherry wood, but at Christmas I always throw pine cones in. Am I kind of defeating the purpose?
No, that's okay because it's such an insignificant amount of pine, and it's per se it's not the wood, it's the cones, and you can even use some pine as kindling. Kindling being wood that's say a 1/4 inch to 1 inch in diameter, and that's your but that's your what you typically would start a fire in your fireplace with, versus say corrugated cardboard.
Once upon a time when I first bought my house, and my husband wasn't home, so I decided to start a fire in my fireplace, and it wouldn't start. I used gasoline.
Yes.
Yeah, my house shook, and I only used a little bit. Lesson learned, you don't use any accelerants in a home fireplace to start a fire. What do you use for kindling?
Well, kindling is you could use pine as kindling. It typically is 1/4 inch to 1 inch in diameter. Obviously, you don't want to burn pine as your primary wood source that you're lighting your fire with, but as kindling, it's great because it's a very soft wood and it catches up quickly. So it's great kindling. For tinder, what you want to use for that is the pine cones. That's what gets the kindling started. So there are different phases throughout the burning process, chronologically, in what you would do. And throughout that process, probably the most important thing is warming up the flue before you do anything, so that you don't get smoke back into the room. So
you're supposed to open the damper of your flue before you begin starting a fireplace, not as you're starting the fire.
You certainly want to open a damper up, or you're gonna have a lot of smoke coming into the room. It's going to be a very unpleasant experience.
So, but when you say warming the flue, do you mean by home air or by the kindling in the fireplace?
Well, basically, you open a damper up. You take a piece of paper, you hold the paper up to the flue for about 15 or 20 seconds, and that changes the air buoyancy of the flue, and it gives you the ability or it gives the chimney the ability to have a good draw capacity. That way, whenever you do start the fire up, you're not getting the products of combustion back into the house because the flue wasn't warmed up properly. So air buoyancy is a really important process. And
who knew?
Yes, exactly. And that's why we're useful as chimney company to inform the public of these types of situations.
I'm going to do that this year.
Good.
And not use gasoline. Is there any other accelerant that should or should never be used in a fireplace? Is there anything to kind of help people who aren't real good at starting fires?
I'm a chimney sweep, and I'm not real good at starting fires. So,
okay.
So an accelerant is a no-no. It doesn't matter what the accelerant is, because masonry by nature has a lot of porosity, and it'll absorb any accelerant you put down. So if you were to light it, not only are you going to have the impact from the accelerant right there where you lit it, it's going to absorb down into or penetrate into other areas of the chimney or combustible members and potentially light them areas up. So accelerants are definitely not a good thing.
Okay.
Excuse me. But some people use paper, some use kindling. I like the wax burners. They're about about the size of this, and I throw them under the. I use them to warm up the flue.
Those little square
Yes.
door flame.
Exactly.
Okay.
I use them to not only warm up the flue, I'll use them to light up the fire. And they're really nice because they'll burn 20, 30 minutes. So that gives you a lot of time for the wood to catch up.
Yeah, that is what I've started choosing since then. I've never repeated that initial experiment. But you said that you use your brushes to clean the flue, but you back it up with chemicals. And I'm seeing a whole bunch of stuff over there, and I just don't even know where to begin. So let's go with the blue can that says anti-creosote.
Yes. Okay. This is a chemical that is now. Whenever you get into a chimney and it has a lot of buildup in it, and what I'm referring to as a buildup as creosote or tar glaze, the brushes are made to remove loose debris, but the hardened debris, the brushes aren't very successful in removing that.
Okay.
And if you can't remove it, you're going to be very, very susceptible to a chimney fire. This is where this type of chemical comes to play. This is called ACS powder, and it's an anti-creosote remover. And for the most part, this is a powder that you squeeze up through the bottom of the stove or the fireplace, and it will draw up through the flue and stick to the creosote. What it does is it's a catalyst. It sticks to the creosote, and it breaks it down from a hardened state into a powder state, which is, one, easily removable, two, it's not flammable any longer. So it's very useful in that way. And sometimes it's more effective than other times. Sometimes it requires us to use this 2, 3, 4 times. And we make that determination when we're out at the job site and we see the level of the buildup that's remaining, and after we clean it and see what we remove. So, but it is a very, very useful chemical, and we have a lot of success with cleaning chimneys with this.
Okay. Wow. That creosote remover, you say it turns into a powder and that just gets swept out with everything else.
Yes.
Now you could use 2, 3, or 4 cans. How often do people normally get their fireplaces cleaned? When there's a problem, or really?
I mean,
how often?
Realistically, a lot of times when there's a problem, but we do have a lot of people that do get regular maintenance. Traditionally, fireplaces are, and I'm going to go against the grain with this because in most circumstances, the CSIA, the NFPA, all the organizations that we're members of or affiliated with in some way, shape, or form, they recommend annual inspections and cleanings. And I agree with that to an extent. However, there are situations that may not necessarily warrant a person getting their chimney cleaned every year. If you burn it 3 or 4 times a year, that may be wasteful. That's not a very significant amount of usage, and in my opinion, not enough to justify spending the money to have it cleaned.
Okay.
However, I would say as a rule, per every cord of wood that a person burns, I would say that would justify cleaning. So if it takes
My fireplace needs cleaning.
yes. So if it takes 3 years to burn a cord of wood, I would say every 3 years that would warrant a cleaning. Now, on the flip side of that, if you burn 3 cords a year, it doesn't mean you clean your chimney 3 times in 1 year. It's either or.
Okay.
Once a year or per cord of wood. However, I think that the chimney should be inspected annually if you intend on using it. Regardless of to what degree you're utilizing it, it should be inspected annually.
Okay. Now, you also have over there that little white thing. What's that?
Okay, these are smoke pellets.
Okay.
And when masonry chimneys are constructed, you should put one of these into the chimney to test the integrity or tightness of the chimney.
The tightness is like if you were inside the chimney looking out at the walls.
Well, yeah,
So to see what's going on that way, or which way?
I think all the above. Because
okay.
when we put these into when we're checking the tightness or integrity of a newly constructed chimney, and NFPA highly recommends that you do this. And when you put this into the chimney, you seal it off at the bottom and you seal it off at the top. Either the smoke will smother itself out, or you'll recognize that there's a breach or a break somewhere within the flue cavity or the smoke chamber or somewhere within the chimney internally in general. And if you see that smoke coming through a wall, then you know that there's a problem. So this is a very useful tool.
Yeah.
Even in old construction, that say somebody may have had a chimney fire, or they just are curious and they just bought the home and they want to make a determination of the tightness of the chimney. This is a great tool and it gives you the ability to know to isolate where the smoke is coming from and the damage associated to it.
And then that gray fireplace refractory caulking?
This is called a medium duty refractory clay. You can get this in a tub, or you can get this in a caulking tube like this. In most cases, whenever you get this material, it's already pre-mixed and ready for use. Do you want me to explain the difference between this and traditional mortar?
Well, sure.
Okay. Masonry chimneys are typically built with or constructed of type N mortar. Okay? And as chimneys are being constructed with this type N mortar, most masons tend to use the same type N mortar to put between the clay tile and between the fire brick.
And that's not N, that's you call it refractory, like a factory?
Yes, medium duty refractory clay.
Okay.
And really, the two areas of the chimney that are required to have this, one is between the clay tile as they are laid up on top of one another. This is what creates a bond between the two. And it has the resistancy to the heat that clay tile is going to, or that flue is going to be exposed to.
Okay.
This also is intended for use between the brick and the fireplace, because it's the part of the chimney that's exposed to the highest amount of temperature, because it's where the fire is contained. So between the clay tile flue liners and between the brick and the fireplace, this is the type of material that you should see. And in most of the cases, you don't always see that, but this is what you should see.
And the reason, again, is because that's a much higher temperature resistant mortar. It won't crack as easily, break as easily?
Well, there's a lot of expansion and contraction. There's a lot of thermal elements going on within a chimney because of the heating and cooling cycles.
Right.
And one, this helps you maintain clearance to combustibles. And two, as the brick and the clay tile are expanding, this has the ability to withstand them shock conditions.
Okay.
To where normal mortar would have a tendency to crack up, dry out, or fall out of the joint.
Now that right there, that meter.
This meter here.
Yeah, that says draft meter.
Yes.
What's the point of that?
Well, this is called an analog. And what an analog does, it measures the draw capacity of a chimney, whether it be not a fireplace, but a wood stove, an oil furnace, a gas furnace. This is where this would come to play. It wouldn't be utilized for a fireplace, but it could be used for any of the other things that I mentioned.
Okay. Now, we're gonna, and these are just things that you're gonna see when the chimney sweep comes and starts cleaning your chimney. Like he's gonna be coming to clean my chimney this year, I can promise you that. I wondered why my white furniture was getting a little sooty last year, and I'm not even kidding. That is what?
This is a carbon monoxide detector, and this measures the levels of carbon monoxide that you may have in your home. Acceptable levels are 0. You should have absolutely no reading of carbon monoxide.
What does that have to do with the chimney sweep?
Well, this has a lot to do with the chimney sweep. Part of our responsibility as a chimney sweep, when we clean the chimney, is to also inspect the chimney. That's an obligation that we have as a chimney sweep, to not give the consumer or our customer a false sense of security. So we have to be certain that we're educated very well in what we do and well versed. So whenever we get into a chimney to do the inspection, we're checking for things like conformity to NFPA 211 standards. Is the flue size adequate for the volume of air that a particular fireplace may be allowing in? If not, some of the products of combustion may spill back into the house. If they were to do so, this would get a reading of that. Gas, and another misconception too is that a lot of people don't get their gas furnaces or oil furnaces cleaned, and you would just be appalled at what we find with these systems whenever we are called out to them. They need to be cleaned as well, especially oil, because there is a fair amount of particulate. So during the inspection process, not to get off track here, but during the inspection process, we're looking for conformity issues. We're looking for cracked clay tile. We're looking for misalignment. We're looking for smoke chambers that may be stepped rather than parged smooth, things that can cause resistancy to the flow of the gases that may retard the flow of the gases that may spill some of the products of combustion back in. We're looking for raccoon. We're looking for bird's nest, things that can block the chimney flue to prevent exhaust from exiting the chimney in a manner that it needs to.
And you keep saying combustion gases. Which gas in particular?
Now, when we say combustion gases, that's referring to, and I say the products of combustion, and whether...
I know, but this meter, what's this specific for? This is a CO meter, right?
This measures the products of combustion. All of them.
Okay.
If the products of combustion are intended to be
ammonia too, because there's ammonia in there. There's all kinds of things.
It doesn't break them down. It doesn't break them down on a case-by-case scenario basis. This is a collaborative reading of carbon monoxide as a whole.
Okay.
If you were to get, say, seven parts per million, that would be a reading that would indicate that you got 7 parts per million within that house that should be contained in that chimney rather than in the home.
In the home. Okay.
Yes. So when we refer to products of combustion, what we're referring to is all the exhaust that's in the chimney that's intended to be conveyed to the outside atmosphere. Some of that is coming back into the home and is creating an indoor air quality issue. And that's where carbon monoxide, that's where you'll get a reading on this. And this is a very serious thing because they do call it the silent killer, because you get symptoms of, a lot of times it's odorless. And in most cases it's odorless. And you may get vague symptoms like symptoms of a cold, or you may get conditions that are more exacerbated to where you feel like you have the flu. Chest pain, nausea, vomiting, tiredness, things of that nature. So these are all things that you want to be conscientious of whenever in the fall and winter months when your fireplace or your furnace is being utilized. If you're not feeling well, carbon monoxide detectors and smoke detectors are just fantastic things, and everybody should have them. They're a great resource or a preventative maintenance measure to protect you and your family.
You have brought us a lot of information here today, and I definitely have learned a lot that I didn't know before I walked in this room.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that everybody should focus on too is the fact that your chimney is going to be a fire hazard if you don't take care of it. Don't use any accelerants in your chimney. Stay away from the pine, and keep your CO detectors turned on, not only for your furnace, but also for your fireplace. And Mike, I'd really like to thank you for joining us today. We did not have time to get to everything we wanted to get to. There's so much more involved here, and Mike is a very knowledgeable guy. And I really want to thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me.
And I want to thank you all for joining us again at home in Bethel Park, and we will see you next time.